powered by Alienware. Many of today's most beloved game franchises have been around for decades. Over the years, franchises go through sequels, reboots, and upgrades. Well, today, many of gaming's most beloved titles barely even resemble their starting points. Yet most of them manage to retain the same core features that made them beloved in the first place. Hi, this is Dash from Curse, and today we're looking at the evolution of video game franchises. The Fallout series truly started in 1988 when Interplay released Wasteland, a game about a group of desert rangers patrolling the desert of the American Southwest after a US/Soviet nuclear war. The game's encounters were turn-based and based off Dungeons & Dragons style system, but it did introduce the concept of an open-world wasteland to explore, with multiple ways to solve a problem and choices that persist after each encounter. Most of the current Fallout staples came almost a decade later after years of failed sequel attempts. In 1998, the first Fallout introduced the 1950s motif, vaults, the special stat system, and most of the irradiated enemy types the series is known for today. All this from a top-down isometric viewpoint. Fallout 3 shifted the series to a first-person perspective and gave it a more action-oriented focus. Fallout New Vegas and Fallout 4 built on that change, and the latter has also introduced the modern gaming trends like crafting and base building. Still, the game hasn't gotten too far away from its roots. It's still about exploring a desolate wasteland. Here's a fun thought. When the original Call of Duty came out in 2003, developer Infinity Ward was hoping that it would be, get this, a Medal of Honor killer. It's easy to forget that at the time, the first-person shooter market was flooded with World War II shooters, and Medal of Honor was the game to beat. The original Call of Duty was itself a World War II shooter. It was released for PC and later for everything else, including the N-Gage. It was based on the Quake 3 Arena engine and introduced a number of concepts that were new for the time. Aiming down the sights, having AI teammates, and playing as multiple allied powers, not just American, were all relatively new concepts popularized by Call of Duty. This was also an era in which shooters were defined by their single-player campaigns. While Call of Duty always had multiplayer, it was practically an afterthought until Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare redefined the genre. After 13 years, each of them bringing a new entry in the franchise, Call of Duty has largely moved away from the World War II theme in favor of modern and future war settings. And now with Infinity Warfare, the franchise is officially jumping the shark. Going to space, but in a lot of ways it hasn't changed much other than the setting. There are certainly new weapons, abilities and stories, but the core of the game, get an enemy in your sights and pull the trigger, is the same as it ever was. Does anyone even remember Warcraft before the World of appeared in front of it? Because it was the gold standard of real-time strategy for a while before Blizzard outdid themselves with StarCraft. Warcraft, Orcs and Humans kicked off the franchise in 1994, and can you guess what the main combatants were? Warcraft, Orcs and Humans was a standard real-time strategy game with a top-down perspective, as were the following two games. The early Warcraft games have an awful lot in common with a lot of today's casual mobile games, despite it predating them by 2 decades. World of Warcraft exploded onto the scene in 2004, and the franchise hasn't looked back since. World of Warcraft is an MMORPG set in the same realm as the previous RTS games. Like the Sim franchise, the change from managing a city's worth of characters to just 1 or 2 proved to be massively successful. GTA is easily one of the most striking examples of a total franchise reimagining over the years. The original Grand Theft Auto came out in 1997, courtesy of DMA Design, a small British gaming studio whose other big claim to fame is creating Lemmings. The original Grand Theft Auto featured the franchise's signature of free-roaming gameplay, but it was a top-down game that, well, it didn't have the most impressive frame rate for its era, let's just say that. Nonetheless, it served as a starting point for the franchise, which would pick up steam after Take-Two Interactive acquired DMA Design and added it to Rockstar North. Things have taken a turn for the cinematic in the GTA universe. GTA 5 has a cast full of character and a well-acted story that plays out more like a season of The Wire than the original game. Still, despite all the changes and the expansion of the universe, it's easier to see the influences that carried over from the original. GTA has never stopped being about running freely around an open world built to cause maximum chaos, then running away from the cops when you cause said mayhem. Final Fantasy remains one of the most ironically named franchises in gaming as we wait for the final 15th game of this series, but the humble beginnings of the series in 1987 were actually intended to be final. After a series of middling titles, Squaresoft was ready to fold, and designer Hironobu Sakaguchi was ready to retire. So they released Sakaguchi's Final Fantasy game before his retirement, a class-based RPG featuring 6 main classes, random encounters, and an explorable overworld. The battles were completely turn-based, and to say the sprite animation was minimal, it's a bit generous. Over the years, Final Fantasy has evolved in a lot of ways. Almost nothing about the original game's design has gone untouched. Battle system, music, presentation, even exploration has changed over nearly 3 decades of iterations. The Final Fantasy franchise of today is focusing on linear progression, action-focused battle systems, and cinema-quality presentation, the likes of which even Hollywood couldn't accomplish at the time of the original Final Fantasy. While early players of the Final Fantasy series got most of their work done by working through a series of menus, recent Final Fantasy entries attempted a more direct button-to-action input loop. Final Fantasy 15 looks to control more like a fighting game than an RPG. The original Doom was a revolutionary foray into the fledgling first-person shooter genre in 1993. Whilst groundbreaking for the time, Doom's graphics haven't aged well at all. The UI takes up an absurd amount of the screen. Also, game designers eventually realized, it's a bad idea to put the gun in the middle of the screen in the ways of the things you need to be shooting. The newest iteration of Doom looks fantastic, and yet it's still very familiar. Doom has never moved away from its core gameplay style, a first-person perspective with a gun out in front. They've moved the weapon in the UI to let you actually see the screen, but it's clearly still Doom. What has changed is the sheer speed of the game. Movement is faster and freer, and hell was never this big, though it was always pretty much this reddish-brown. These are just a few of the franchises that have undergone drastic evolution since they were conceived. Let us know how your favorite franchises changed in the comments below. As always, this is Dash for Kerr saying thanks for watching and enjoy the game. Something is coming. Do you have what it takes to be a pro gamer? And are you ready to take your skills to the next level and win cool prizes? Visit thelab.gg to find out more.